The interaction between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White might not have been a big deal, according to them, but the current state of the Fever is certainly a big deal. That has been proven by their actions, the fact that there was a meeting, and some comments from Sophie Cunningham. Let's get right into the comments from Cunningham because they're pretty strong, to be honest with you. You know, she did not mince words, did not beat around the bush, and basically issued a direct challenge to some of her teammates. The first thing that came up was defensive scheme. She brought it up, in fact, and that's been a criticism of the coach, which is that the Fever are only running one defensive scheme, a switching scheme.
What if the biggest threat to Caitlin Clark's career isn't another team, isn't a rival player, and isn't even her own game? What if the real danger is sitting right next to her on the bench? Because what just went down inside the Indiana Fever locker room isn't your typical team disagreement. This is a full-blown internal crisis that one veteran just dragged into the spotlight for the entire world to see. And honestly, once you hear what Sophie Cunningham said publicly about her own teammates, you'll understand why the
defensive scheme. She brought it up, in fact, and that's been a criticism of the coach, which is that the Fever are only running one defensive scheme, a switching scheme, switch 1 through 5, which allows their players to be put on an island, allows Caitlin Clark to be targeted by offenses, players to pick up foul trouble, having to guard one-on-one. Raven Johnson had 6 fouls in 10 minutes. This was Sophie Cunningham on that, which she brought up herself.
We have the personnel to do it. I think something that's hurting us right now is we're only playing one defensive scheme, and in this league, it's too good. You can't, and people are going to.
This franchise is teetering on the edge of something it might not come back from. It all started with a game the Fever had no business losing. Saturday night, nationally televised, the whole country watching. Indiana was favored by double digits. They were supposed to cruise, instead they got embarrassed. Caitlin Clark had one of the worst performances of her career, 6 points, 1 for 7 from the field, 0 for 3 from deep. She spent most of the night in foul trouble and barely logged 21 minutes. This wasn't the player who's been averaging over 20 points a game this season. This was
something that's hurting us right now is we're only playing one defensive scheme, and in this league, it's too good. You can't, and people are going to pick us apart. And so, we got to dial in. We got to focus. Your IQ has to be on point. You have to know what schemes we're doing, and if you can't do that, then you can't play. And that's the point where we're at right now.
So if you can't do that, you can't play, and that's the point that we're at right now.
When you say you're playing one defensive scheme, that you have others installed, you just aren't ready to run them in games?
I mean, we had probably 10 of them last year. Each team has stuff up their sleeve, but if you can't execute them, you can't do them. And so this team really does have to focus. We have a lot of young guys.
Sophie wasn't just talking about strategy, she was talking about survival. She revealed that while the team has 10 different defensive schemes in their back pocket, they can only run one because half the roster can't handle the others. Imagine having the tools to win but being held back because your teammates can't grasp the playbook. She made it clear that the IQ on this team isn't where it needs to be, and the lack of focus is actively sabotaging their season. It's not just a skill gap anymore. It's a mental breakdown that's costing them games and credibility.
You can't execute them, you can't do them. And so this team really does have to focus. We have a lot of young guns. We have a lot of people who are very talented. But at the same time, you have to dial in and know what we're doing. Otherwise, it just won't work. And so
she goes on later to talk about the defensive schemes and how there are more than was outlined there, and just the one. The comments themselves are intriguing to me, though, too, because she says you either, focus and do it or you don't play. That's where we're at right now, which you have to wonder who that's specifically in reference to. I also think her citing youth and new players and the like is makes it less specific about Caitlin Clark, though
someone who looked trapped, frustrated, and completely unsupported. And it came right on the heels of a gut punch loss to the Golden State Valkyries, 88-90. Just like that, the Fever dropped to 4-4. A team built to compete for a championship was suddenly looking like a squad that couldn't get out of its own way. But the final score wasn't even the real story that night. What happened on the sideline during a second quarter timeout would set the entire basketball world on fire. Cameras caught Stephanie White going at Caitlin Clark.
You have to wonder who that's specifically in reference to. I also think her citing youth and new players and the like is makes it less specific about Caitlin Clark, Though she did talk about Caitlin Clark a little bit in or she didn't talk about Caitlin Clark, let me be fair. She was asked about a coach challenging a player like Stephanie White did Caitlin Clark essentially, and responded to that also as part of her answer.
For the defense, we're just not able to execute right now. You know, it's yeah, we have them. We have a ton of them. We've tried to do them, but they just break down because we can't execute.
Animated, pointing at her, slapping her own knee in frustration. Clark sat there for a moment, took a sip of water, stayed composed, but then she fired back with her own gestures matching that energy. White's response was immediate. She pulled Clark from the game and inserted rookie Raven Johnson. The clip went viral in minutes, over 2 million views within 24 hours, nearly 1,000 comments. Fans lost their minds. Some demanded White be fired on the spot. Others begged Clark to request a trade. It got so out of hand that commentator Skip Bayless claimed the
talked about how she enjoys challenging players, and how have you maybe felt that as a player yourself, and how much do you appreciate coaches wanting to kind of direct you?
Yeah, I think when a coach wants to challenge you, she just sees your potential, you know, and it's not always going to be good. You know, I've been in and out of the starting lineup right now, and you have to put your ego and pride aside for what's best for the team and what the team needs. And so I think if everyone is willing to do that and wants to see the person right next to them be more successful than them, we're going to be really, really good, and we're going to be where we want to be at the end of the season. But you need a coach that's going to challenge you. You need a coach that's going to believe in you when sometimes you don't believe in yourself. And Steph is that.
Fever had already let White go, a rumor that turned out to be completely false. The internet was melting down. But behind closed doors, a much more important conversation was taking shape, and nobody outside that locker room knew about it yet. By Monday, both Clark and White stepped in front of the microphones to calm things down. White framed it simply. She was challenging a player, that's coaching. She pointed out that nobody blinks when the same thing happens in men's sports. Clark backed her coach.
You want to scale back and try to execute one or two really well and sort of get a mindset and get some confidence. But then you got to be able to expand. And I think part of that is challenging them to be able to do that and do that consistently. I think part of that's ownership. Of our players to be able to do it. Again, we have a lot of new players who are playing, who have been in different kinds of systems and who've been asked to do different things.
So, that's another interesting part of it too. Again, so much of the defensive, so much of the attention is always on Clark. So a lot of it was on Clark and White's interaction. And then the defensive thing has been on Clark. The Fever are switching more. Their switch rate is higher than any team in the league.
Completely. She brought up the moment last season when she broke down in White's arms after getting hurt in Connecticut. She called White someone she'd ride for the rest of her life. White added that they're both competitive, both stubborn, and more alike than different. Clark went even further and took full accountability. She admitted she's not perfect, said the team is playing like the 500 squad their record says they are, and that she needs to look in the mirror. It seemed like the story was over. Two competitive people clashed in the heat of the moment, talked it out, moved on. Case closed, except it wasn't.
That bring you closer together? Though, it's worth saying, like, the fact that this is happening shows that the issues are real.
I think it's a part of being a family, I think it's a part of, if you think everything is glitz and glamour, then you're mistaken. I think that hard times make you, or hard times can break you, and hopefully it don't break us. And I think that losing is important. I think you find out a lot about yourself, about where you need to be, where you're missing the mark, and I think that I'm happy that it's happening now. If there is frustrations, and I would rather it be now than later.
So that was Kelsey Mitchell on that.
Because another voice emerged from inside the locker room, and she had zero interest in playing peacemaker. Sophie Cunningham came out swinging. She revealed the team had held a private meeting where they peeled back every single layer. No sugarcoating, no safe spaces. And then she took it public in a way that left no room for interpretation. She said point blank that what's hurting the Fever right now is that they're only running one defensive scheme. One. In a league this talented, that's a death sentence. She said your IQ has to be on point, you have to know what schemes the team is running, and if you can't do that, you can't play. Those were her exact words, and she wasn't just venting, she was issuing an ultimatum. The scheme she's talking about is a switching system. The Fever switch at a higher rate than any other team in the league. That means Caitlin Clark is constantly being put on an island, forced to guard isolation plays against bigger, stronger players who are specifically hunting her. The numbers back it up. Reports indicate Clark has defended more isolation plays than any player in the league this season, nearly double the amount of the next closest player. Over a recent 4-game stretch, she reportedly defended more isolations than any player has faced over a similar span in the last 3 seasons. Sophie called the team too soft and pointed out they gave up over 90 points in the paint across their 2 losses. This wasn't a general observation. This was a veteran calling out her own roster for failing the team's most important player. And what she revealed next would expose the true depth of the problem. Sophie revealed something that made the whole situation even more painful. She said the team had roughly 10 different defensive schemes last year. 10. But right now, they can only execute one because the roster can't handle anything more complex. She put it plainly. If 4 players are doing their job and 1 person isn't, it ruins the entire scheme every single time. Think about that for a second. A professional basketball team with a generational talent on the roster is being held hostage because certain players can't grasp the playbook. Coach White confirmed this from her own angle, saying they've had to scale back and simplify things just to build some basic confidence before they can expand. That's a devastating admission. Being told your coach has to dumb down the game plan because you're not ready is the kind of thing that should keep players up at night. Raven Johnson, the rookie out of South Carolina who was drafted 10th overall this year, is still adjusting. Timpson needs development. Monique Billings was brought in to strengthen the paint, but the integration hasn't been seamless. And Aaliyah Boston, who has the ceiling of a Defensive Player of the Year, is being forced to clean up everybody else's mess as the last line of defense. When the perimeter breaks down, and it breaks down constantly, everything falls on her shoulders. It's an unsustainable system built on a foundation of sand. But Sophie wasn't done yet. Her next comments would cut even deeper into the heart of the locker room. Sophie turned her attention to something even more uncomfortable than strategy. She started talking about ego. She said players need to put their pride aside and want to see the person next to them succeed more than themselves. She used her own situation as proof. She's been in and out of the starting lineup and hasn't complained once. Her message was clear. If she can swallow her pride and do what's best for the team, there's no excuse for anyone else. She defended White passionately, saying every player needs a coach willing to challenge them and believe in them even when they don't believe in themselves. Reports suggest some players have quietly struggled with playing a supporting role in what's become the Caitlin Clark show. Whether that's jealousy, frustration, or just an unwillingness to sacrifice personal stats, Sophie made it obvious she has no patience for any of it. Kelsey Mitchell added her own perspective, and it carried a heavier tone than most people expected. She acknowledged that what looks glamorous from the outside is far from it on the inside. She said hard times either make you or break you, and right now the Fever are finding out which one it's going to be. She admitted that losing reveals exactly where you're falling short, and said she'd rather deal with these frustrations now than later. It was honest, raw, and tinged with a level of urgency that tells you the locker room knows they're running out of time. The Caitlin Clark problem goes deeper than just one bad game or one viral sideline moment. Across the 2 recent losses, she scored just 22 points on 4 of 19 shooting. She was hunted relentlessly on defense, dragged into foul trouble, and left exposed by teammates who couldn't execute around her. Her road shooting numbers have been a concern dating back to last season, with reports suggesting she's been ice cold from 3 on the road over an extended stretch. Sue Bird reportedly weighed in with advice drawn from her own experience, saying she dealt with the same thing and eventually learned every tendency of every player she'd be guarding, finding their one weakness and attacking it. Clark herself acknowledged the reality. She expects to keep getting targeted. She knows she's guarded more isolations than probably anyone in the league. The question isn't whether opponents will keep coming after her. They will. The question is whether her teammates will finally step up and share that burden or continue to leave her stranded. The Indiana Fever sit at 4-4. For a team that made consecutive playoff appearances and secured the franchise's first postseason series victory since 2015, that record feels like a failure. They're the highest scoring team in the league right now, averaging nearly 92 points a game, and Clark's 20-point average is a career high. But none of that matters when you're giving up almost 89 points per game on the other end, ranking near the bottom of the league in scoring defense. This is a team built to compete for a title. They finished 1 game short of the WNBA finals last season. The pieces are there, the talent is there, but the cohesion, the trust, and the defensive discipline are nowhere to be found. Sophie Cunningham's public challenge is either going to be the wake-up call that turns the season around, or the moment historians point to as the beginning of the end. They did manage to pick up a win over the Atlanta Dream shortly after the meeting, which might suggest the message landed, at least temporarily. But one win doesn't fix a fractured identity. The next few weeks will reveal everything. Will this roster answer Sophie's challenge with action, sacrifice, and loyalty? Or will bruised egos and defensive breakdowns continue to waste the prime years of a player who only comes around once in a generation? Because right now, the biggest opponent the Indiana Fever face isn't on the other side of the court. It's staring back at them from inside their own locker room.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.